So I'm Jill Kowalchuk. I'm the director for CanSSOC. If you attended an earlier session, you might have seen me. This session is different, like all of our sessions, and we'll talk about that in a bit more. First, we'll go to the early morning in Australia. Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave O'Lone. I'm head of cyber relations for AARNet, which is Australia's academic research network.
In UK?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Lee Harrigan-Green from Jisc. I'm the Chief Security Architect in the Cybersecurity Division, and we offer education services in the education space in the UK. Over to you, Joe.
Joe Pitt. I'm a senior security analyst in Jisc Cyber Threat Intelligence team.
Great, and back to Canada.
Hi, my name is Vezina. I'm security architect and product lead threat feed at CanSSOC.
Great, we will dive in. So today's presentation, in this 45 minutes, we're going to build upon what you might have heard from CanSSOC, for myself and some of my colleagues earlier so far, and really focus on this component that we've been working on recently, which is the global partnership. We're fortunate that we have attendees here today, colleagues from AARNet and Jisc. Unfortunately, our other partner from the United States was not able to join us, but we are working closely with OmniSOC as well. OmniSOC has also brought ISAC to the table. And so it's a great opportunity for all of us to work together. So the journey around this global partnership started over a year ago at an EDUCAUSE session, or even some conversations before that, where we got together and talked about the opportunity where we could work, where we needed to work together. The cybersecurity challenge impacting the academic sector globally is very much what we see in Canada, which it is growing at an exponential rate. And we need to work together to really defend and improve our information security posture. You might ask, so where we started this partnership is very much on the threat intelligence and sharing of threat intelligence. And we'll talk more about this today, both from a technology perspective, as well as what we're sharing and why that might impact you at your institutions in Canada. But you might get the question of why Intel? Why did you start with the sharing of threat intel? To be honest, we had lengthy discussions about a wide range of topics. So we talked about, follow the sun, multiple eyes on pain related to shared security operations center, all of which we think would absolutely be beneficial to work towards. But as we all know, and we know even inside Canada, this is really challenging. And crossing global borders makes it even more challenging. So definitely something we want to keep towards looking for the opportunity of what might be next. But this is a really great opportunity for a place that we could start. So a little bit about the history. I'm not going to go into all of what you see on the slide as the history, but what I think is really important is it takes time to develop these partnerships. We've certainly found this from the CanSSOC perspective, and globally it wasn't any different in the sense that it takes time to build a level of trust, get an understanding of what each organization is doing, what the opportunities for collaboration are. There was a lot of excitement around sharing, and so we had a lot of conversations around sharing best practices and diving into that while we worked on the tangible, how could we meaningfully work together. And a big part of that is just getting that agreement. So building the trust, we did a great job of building the trust amongst the group you see here, as well as others from our organizations. But of course, we need to formalize that. So big thanks to Dave and AARNet who led us through that, which took a lot of time and energy. And we're really excited to have signed that agreement just recently that allows for us to share. So I really want to focus today's session on getting my colleagues to talk a little bit about what they're doing in each one of their jurisdictions. And so from the CanSSOC perspective, if you didn't hear earlier about what CanSSOC is, feel free to reach out, or we have some other sessions that you could attend. But the focus from a CanSSOC perspective is better than you can do on your own, always in partnership. On the partnership side for this presentation, we're focusing on those relationships with global partners. And at the end, we're really going to tie that back to how this might be relevant to you at your institution within Canada, and finish with a bit of a call to action on how you might be able to participate and what that opportunity might look like. You might have heard in earlier sessions around threat feed. This has come up a lot. It's the first component or service that CanSSOC has launched. We're really thrilled to be supported by Canary's Cybersecurity Initiatives program and launched with them just a couple of weeks ago. So if you're an institution in Canada and you'd like to take advantage of the threat intelligence that we're sharing from a number of different sources, including our global partners, then we encourage you, if you haven't done so already, reach out to your NREN partner who will put you in touch with Canary and get the Canary agreement signed and then the CanSSOC confidentiality agreement so we can work towards sharing that intelligence to you and working with you. If you want to learn more about that initiative, there is a session on Friday, which I encourage you to attend, where they'll dive into more detail about what that initiative is and how a few different institutions in Canada are using that. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues at Jisc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jill. So I'm going to be just talking, as Jill alluded to there, I'm going to just talk about some of the services that we offer. This is a very busy slide in a way, but it just shows you how we split our services out in the prepare, detect, respond, recover methodology. So we've got a number of services here. So I think the one thing that isn't on this slide is the network that we provide at Jisc. So we provide the Janet network, which is the UK's research and academic network, with over 18 million users on there. And we have over 1 terabit of external peering. So quite a lot of Netflix is in use at any one point in time on our network. So from that perspective, but it's just to give you an idea of how vast the actual network that we offer is. With that in mind, so it kind of leads on with over 1 terabit of peering, DDoS is actually a really big problem in that environment. And I'm not sure if this is a good stat, but we believe that we have seen the largest DDoS in the education and research space. And I think that was that peaked at over 400 gigabits a second. So we've had some experience in dealing with that sort of service. One of the other things that we deal with and have been quite busy as of recently is our computer security incident response team. As you all will be aware, the threat of ransomware has been growing, this team has been heavily involved in all of those institutions in the UK that have been affected by ransomware recently. So we offer a national DNS resolver service, and this is a service which it's a resolver service at the end of the day. But the reason why we offer it is, again, for those feeds that only a national entity can get for protecting multiple people at multiple institutions at any one time. And that allows us to provide more feeds into that to provide protection. So we take our own threat intelligence feeds and put it into that service. But not only that, our members actually provide us more intelligence into that service as well. So it's an ecosystem where they provide us the intelligence that we can help protect our members with. And in turn, we can provide that into this global partnership as well. Another thing that we offer is a managed SIEM service. So we're purely in that detect space. A lot of our institutions find that a very hard area to work within. And these are all services that you can see we actually already offering these. We're not in development at the moment. Another service that we're in development at the moment is that centralized filtering service. So this is effectively peeling off that what we may deem as bad traffic. A lot of these ransomware issues have been recently have been knocking on the front door, so open RDP and things like that. And so we're looking at ways that we can protect UK members in that space by utilizing a nice centralized firewall to provide some additional protection. And we're currently developing that at the moment. A managed SOC service, so we're looking at using our own SOAR automation tools to provide these services to our members to allow them to, based upon the intelligence they have or we have, to mitigate that potential threat as it's happened. And one thing that we're trying to say is that the first institution that gets hit is the last. And that's one of the reasons for setting up this global partnership as well. Again, this extends into that managed firewall element of where we are providing that management on the firewall that connects that institution in place. And another one there, you'll see a shared national intelligence. We're in development of that, so we're finishing off our own legals. Jill alluded to how complex it was for us to get this MOU sorted. We're seeing that just on a national level as well, so not to be excluded there. We provide various different professional services, so from penetration testing to simulations that we can provide with institutions, and we get information back from all of these. And you'll see when I come to wrap up this slide, you'll see why these particular services have been listed. Going on, we offer, where we don't see a benefit of us offering a service directly, we place purchasing frameworks in place for those. So we have a number of cybersecurity purchasing frameworks here in the UK, which we provide to our members. And one of the most important sources of information is these third-party collaborations. So we actively engage in this space and work with third parties in the UK and internationally to provide this other protections that we can. And this goes on again to the prepare, where we provide security training. We run incident response courses for all of our members. And again, on the back of all these ransomware issues that we see, we provide that guidance and advice. So you might be asking why all of these services, and these ones in particular. These are all services which we can get intelligence from or use. And for us, everything that we do needs to be intelligence led now, in order for it to be better protecting our members and better protecting Jisc ourselves as an institution. I think that's it for me from now. I'll be coming back to you, and I think it's now over to Dave, I believe, Jill.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So we will, thanks for that overview of sort of where Jisc is at. So Dave, over to you. Why don't you give us a bit of an overview of where things are at in the Australian space?
Yeah, so similar to Jisc, from an AARNet perspective, we're the Australian NREN, so we're actually owned by the Australian universities and the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation. And so we, over the last few years, have started to develop a lot more cybersecurity products, essentially from a demand from our members, so our initial member institutions being all the universities, seeking a broader sector-wide approach to a number of these challenges. And so on top of security, we also provide a whole bunch of over-the-top type services, collaboration tools. So we host Zoom, for example, for our sector, but also research data cloud sort of services. And all of these sorts of things, we've seen that requirement to drive into a whole bunch more security focused services. So the most significant one we have is our managed SOC service. So we've put that into production in 2020. We've currently got about 6 universities feeding into that. By the end of the year, we'll have we're looking at about 16 universities who will have that as a fully managed SOC service. And so that SOC service provides that detection and incident response. We're not actually doing the remediation elements associated with that SOC service as it stands now. But what we're now doing is building upon that service, taking in, as Lee pointed out, some of the things that Jisc are doing. We're doing the same sort of thing of looking at what does our network provide us? What are all of the services that we provide that can give us a whole bunch more information, contextualization of data, and building up that intelligence picture. And so some of those things that we're seeing is DDoS. So we had a DDoS detection service. We've now put in a DDoS active mitigation service. So with that, we see that that service on all our border routers, on the international side of our peering links, so that we shut down traffic on those sorts of bases. We haven't seen the size scale of DDoS attack that Lee's seen, thankfully enough. But we're in the process of coupling that service with our SOC, but also what we're looking at is the DDoS service itself provides us access to a whole bunch of information and telemetry and that early warning system of how do we understand what's actually going on, what that thematic shift is across the sector. We also provide cybersecurity for schools. So we have a whole bunch of schools where we're looking at where we provide managed firewalls, a specific firewall service called CyberHound, where we then help the schools with their security in that space. Where one of the things we've got there in the development stage is cyber assurance, and what we're doing there is using some tools to emulate attacks. And so aligned to the modern attack framework, where we'll take a known attack, simulate that so that we can then look at that defensive process. So get it from assisting that blue team element. It's not to replace your traditional red team or penetration testing, but it's that complementary, it's that active sort of service. And so we're coupling that along with our SOC to provide a bit more of the broader sort of security elements. We're also looking at secure internet gateway services, so managed filtered firewalls, where we align to a whole bunch of the government standards in Australia, seeing a lot more of that shift in Australia for a desire there to build some of those services. As part of all of this, we're a partner in a group called AHEX, the Australia Higher Education Cybersecurity Service, and so along with similar sort of education focused partners, we're providing a whole bunch of engagement across the higher ed sector in Australia to look at how we can consolidate services or have economies of scale. And so threat sharing is one of those things. We're actively involved in the Australian sector around that. From that, I've also spent a lot of time trying to develop our relationship with the Australian government on how we do a lot of that sharing, how we also make sure that when we are sharing with the government, that there's a dividend back. And so they're those sorts of conversations that we're trying to have in Australia on the security side. So I think that's in a nutshell where AARNet's at.
Great. Thanks, Dave and Lee, for giving that overview. Before I'm going to pass it on to Joe to dive a little bit more into the technical architecture of how we're sharing information, I wanted to say that when we were preparing for this and I was looking at the slides from AARNet and Jisc and looking at the list, it's interesting because we're doing a lot of the same types of things in Canada. But in our context, we have this idea of this federated model, which for those who listened to me this morning, you heard quite a bit about. And so there's a really great opportunity where we can work to support our institutions in providing similar sets of what you see here, but where it makes sense at the regional level and where it makes sense to be brought together nationally, and then continuing to evolve that to take some of those lessons learned from both of you and in seeing how we can most effectively move forward to support our members. So with that, I would like to pass it on to Joe, who's going to dive a little bit into the technical architecture and how we set this up and how we're sharing from that perspective.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe. So we settled on MISP as the common platform that we're going to be using to share this cyber threat intelligence in order to better protect education research around the world. So each partner is operating their own MISP instance, and then Jisc also operate a second centralized instance with sort of the star topology that you see on the slide there. By having that sort of central node, we've managed to reduce the number of interconnections that need to be set up exponentially, meaning that if in the future we add further members to this, we don't all have to set up connections. It becomes simpler for us to initially set up and maintain going forward. So each partner connects their instance to the central one, giving them control of what information they push into and pull out of the sharing community, making sure that we can all sort of respect the different sharing agreements we have in place Once a member receives the intelligence onto their instance, they're able to then use that intelligence with the various services that Lee listed off and Dave listed off, and also Jill said that they're working on as well, to feed that into those services and better protect their respective end runs. By doing that in an automated way, we then allow the information to be shared and mitigate new incidents, even if the analysts receiving it are actually asleep at the moment. So while it's the nice working day for you in Canada, it's currently 8 p.m. in the UK and a lovely 5 a.m. for Dave over in Australia. So as I say, that automation means that around the clock, different people can see new things and protect the parties who are quite happily asleep. So that's a quick overview of the technical architecture we've gone with and sort of some of the reasoning why.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Joe. As I did note, it is only 5 a.m. for Dave. It could have actually been worse than 2 a.m. So I like to look on the positive. So with this, I'm going to pass it over to Martin Vezina, who's going to talk a little bit more about the work that was done around the collaboration around how we effectively share this intelligence. Okay?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So if we look at threat intelligence, we see that the quality of it varies widely. So here, this is an example of threat intel that was being shared in the MIST by the open source community that I took. So when we're using MIST, so we can see that there's a huge improvement over threat intel that's been shared through PDF reports, through emails, tweets, and through other means. But even when we're using MIST, so anyone can share practically anything, there's large differences with regard to how that information is reported. So here in this screenshot, so it's just an example to highlight the differences across multiple sources. I don't want to infer any judgment on those sources. So if we look at our fourth column, so those are galaxies, and I'll explain on next slide what galaxies are exactly. But here, what's important is to see that, well, for some events, there's no galaxies being mentioned. And when galaxies are mentioned, we see that it's attack pattern, another one is using the sector galaxy. Fifth column are tags, and tags I'll explain next slide what tags are exactly. But what's important here is to see that, well, there's the TLP tags that are leveraged pretty much consistently across those 4 events, but all the other tags seems like they've been randomly selected. So it's not consistent. We're not sharing threat intelligence for fun. It has to be practical. If I want to design any downstream use cases, I need to be able to rely on the threat intel being shared predictably. Next slide, please, Jill. Being on the same platform, it's not enough to be effective. We want to standardize the way that we create our threat intelligence. So in MIST, there's 2 concepts that allow to provide enrichment on events: galaxies and tags. So in terms of our global sharing group, we decided to use galaxies to provide context on an event itself. Context like MIST target information, which is essentially geographical targeting, MIST sector, which is what specific industry sector a threat is targeting. And we also have the MITRE attack pattern, which allows to express the specific behavior of the threat that we are exchanging information on. In addition to that, we decided to use tags to provide context around the event report. So galaxies, the event itself, tags, we're using them more to provide context around the event report. So we're using the Admiralty scale taxonomy. So this allows to express confidence information around the reliability of the source information, also around the credibility of the information that's being reported. The traffic light protocol, so this is essentially, it expresses the confidentiality around the information that's being reported. The permissible action protocol, so this one is to express how the information can be used. So as an example, sometimes just looking up an indicator of compromise on VirusTotal it can be revealing too much information about what we know. So using permissible action protocol, so we could say, no, don't even look up that information on Aristotle. And finally, to add even more context, we define our own global sharing taxonomy that we call global sharing. In there, so we have who we can share the information with. So, for example, so let's say some information with IDEA, this we can share with the government, maybe some other information where we decided we can share it with the open source community. Also, how was that threat intel discovered? Was it an analyst? Is it through automation? So we can all express that using global sharing taxonomy. Next slide, please. Here, so this is an example of a real event that's being shared within our global sharing group. We can see in there galaxies and tags that are being used effectively, like I explained to you in the previous slide. When we have threat intelligence like this, it's very easy to design use cases because the threat intel is predictable, and it's the way that it's described, it's consistent. And that's what we are aiming toward with our group. So we want to share threat intel, but even more than that, we want to make sure that we are effectively sharing it so that we can effectively leverage it. And that's it, Jill.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Matan. That was a really great overview. I would encourage anybody on the call, if you have any questions, please put them in there. Before we dive into any questions that we might have from those on the call, we wanted to just have a little bit of a conversation around what will get shared. I'm actually going to stop sharing so we can all see each other. And so I'm going to go to each one of my global partners and ask them to just talk a little bit about sort of what information they plan on sharing, how they're deriving that information, and what they plan on putting back into it. So Lee, why don't we start with you from the Jisc perspective?
Yeah, so from our perspective, it's quite interesting because we have, so for the network service that we provide, actually, and to be eligible for any services that we offer, we require our members to sign up for a security policy. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is quite important, because in that policy, it states for us that we will share information with relevant third parties, of which this global sharing group is one. And from our perspective, that doesn't allow us just to unwillingly share information from members, but it's a case of to advise them that we will do. But the other sorts of areas where we're deriving this intelligence from for the purpose of sharing, so we see this fits into effectively three categories. There's the intelligence that we generate, and that's the services that we offer already. So, for instance, the DDoS mitigation platforms that we provide, the National Resolver Service, they're really good sources of these sorts of intelligence, so we can actually see and prevent attacks happening upon members within those platforms. So that's the services we offer. Then there's the information we get from the members. So that would be a potential attack within a member institution, and with their agreement, when we've resolved the issue with them, we would then share the relevant IOCs in that particular attack or event with this sharing group as well. And then the third area is effectively what we can do from the automation side of things. So that would be when we see something unusual from our own net flow. We're doing, the team that Joe's in will be doing that threat intelligence and going out and looking for things. And that's the other key thing, which we find, and that's our members not knowing that they've got an issue, and then us seeing it. So, and I think that's the most valuable area for us to get that information. But then where are we going to use that? That's all those other services that we can use. And so back into that, that centralized DNS platform, resolver services, those firewalls that we're going to be utilizing in member institutions. They're all points where we can help protect everybody in turn. So I've rambled on quite a bit there.
No, I think that was great. You covered all of the points we added. So Dave, did you want to talk a little bit from the AARNet perspective?
Yeah, so in quite a similar sort of way to what Jisc looking at doing, taking a whole bunch of the information that we access through so things like our SOC and those sorts of services. What we'll be doing is providing and sharing some of those verified indicators. So if we're involved or we have some involvement or understanding of any attacks within Australia, any of that sort of information, we'll obviously from a institution permission basis, we'll provide a sharing arrangement around that, and that data will be shared on an anonymous basis. The attribution in a lot of respects actually doesn't really add a lot of relevance anyway. So with those sorts of things, we'll provide that sharing. Also looking at the sightings and that sort of thing. So any of the information that all the other partners share, one of the things that we also, as a broader group, we've discussed how the value of sightings and where we see indicators, what we see that propagation across the globe from affecting different sectors, different countries, that sort of thing. That's something that we see quite a strong value proposition there. Because we'll be sharing on a reciprocated basis with our member partners in Australia, one of the things that we're looking at is it's not just about customers that we have on our SOC and those sorts of things. It's all the institutions, and we're in the process of developing that reciprocating arrangement with all of those institutions in Australia. And so any information that they're sharing on that basis, we'll be building in that mechanism so that information can be shared to the broader sector. So they're those mechanisms we're looking at. We're also aiming to provide a whole bunch of human readable information, that sort of thing, contextual information to partners as well. And so as our maturity journey in this space goes on, these are the sorts of things that we're aiming to share out. Jill?
Great, thanks. Thanks, Dave. So I'm going to close us off on this topic with talking about this from the CanSSOC perspective and also to the perspective of the institutions that are on this call and to talk about how it might fit. I will say we do have 10 minutes left. Either raise your hand or put questions in the chat so I make sure we have them if you do have any. So in terms of the sharing from the Canadian context, what we plan on sharing back to our global partners, which I think is really important for everybody that is on this call, is that we will share initially two big things. So the first thing that ultimately we're going to share intelligence that we find and generate inside Canada. So we certainly would never share any of the commercial intelligence or the intelligence from a federal partner, as we're restricted in the ability to share that intel. But as everybody on the call maybe we should know, is a big part of what we're doing is providing a mechanism for sharing intelligence from institutions inside Canada back to other institutions inside Canada, but also if authorized globally. So for institutions that disclose to us incidents that have happened, either to report at CanSSOC.ca or by reaching out on Slack or another mechanism, we will take the intelligence you share and immediately ask you what you're comfortable with us sharing. So ideally, if you reached out, you're comfortable with us putting into our Canadian MISP instance, and we will sort of do that almost immediately. In addition, we'll ask if you're willing for us to share an advisory that provides additional context on what might be happening via email or Slack out to the Canadian institutions. And we're also going to ask if you're comfortable with us sharing with this anonymized to our global partners. So your institution would never be disclosed. It would all be indicated as coming from CanSSOC, and it would include the indicators and any information you might be comfortable with us sharing out to the global partners you see here, and then ultimately out to their members. And so this is an opportunity where we can not only share what's happening on our, what we're seeing happening to our institutions, but also, as Dave mentioned, we can then look at that information and add additional sightings or intel. So maybe we can see that something that is currently happening or has happened on one of our partner networks is already happened, or maybe prevented from happening, or stopped and mitigated that attack at one of the institutions globally with one of the partners you have on this call. And that's really powerful in us being able to better protect the sector as a whole and helping you to respond to those actions. And so I will encourage everybody to, if you see something, no matter how small you might think it is on your network or at your institution, please reach out either to CanSSOC or to your NREN partners, indicating they can reach out to CanSSOC around what intelligence you might have. Even if you don't have a lot, we can work with you to see what additional information we can glean from what's happening and how we might be able to share that. We also encourage you to allow us to share it in an anonymized fashion with our global partners so we can get it out to this global network and other institutions globally as well. So the other place where we have an opportunity that we can share is, in addition to the sort of manual reporting of incidents, we've also working with a few institutions in Canada around automated reporting of indicators. And so what we're doing is we have different rules set up on firewalls and other systems where they see something that looks suspicious or malicious, and it gets fed through our curation process to make sure we're not blocking something that is inappropriate into our missed instance. And as we work with those institutions, if they authorize that and it makes sense from the global sector, we would also share that intelligence back out with our global partners as well. Again, we would only do that with permission from the institutions. We very much, CanSSOC very much takes the approach that we share your information only with who you will let us and with what makes sense given the context of your sector. I do want to add one other piece that I think makes a lot of sense and ties into what we've shared here. My friend talked a little bit about MISP and Galaxy and the opportunity that provides around adding additional context. This is something we've had a number of internal conversations within CanSSOC, and we're really eager to do, as leveraging the MITRE framework as well as how it fits inside MISP through Galaxy will provide institutions both inside CanSSOC as well as with our global partners with a lot more context. And so, you know, we know immediately what happened is you're potentially in something, you've shared indicators with us. The goal for you is to find out and manage and respond to that and recover from that incident. And so reach out immediately and we'll share the minimal information we have. But as you move through that and understand a little bit more around what's happening, if you're able to follow back up with us so we can add that additional context related to MITRE to share back out again within Canada and globally, it will really add to the intelligence that we're sharing and the benefit we're given to that broader community. So I know this is something we're working on. We're hopeful in the next week or two, we'll actually be able to do that with the first set of indicators that we have. So this is new for Dave and Joe and Lee as well, but it's sort of in the works on our end, and hope that it can help provide the framework for that as we go forward. So I want to pause. We do have 5 minutes left, so we can take any questions that might have. I have a couple, but Joe, Martin, Lee, Dave, I wanted to open it up. Was there any other final comments you had or pieces you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what you're saying there. The benefit of this community is it's truly that actionable intelligence that we can share, and I don't think we can stress it enough that it's that actionable intelligence that we share that will help prevent an issue within your own organizations. So don't be scared about coming forward, because we will always share this information in a non-actionable method. So yeah, but just reiterating the fact that it's the actionable stuff that we're looking to share, not necessarily the stuff that is, which you can be high volume, low value, is what I would just reiterate.
Excellent. Joe, did you want to add? Oh, Dave.
Gotcha.
I think basically it's echoing Lee with the this isn't something that one organization or one nation is able to fix on their own. I think we need sort of this type of collaboration to really tackle the problem.
And a big thing from following on from what everyone else said in this space is the timeliness is really important, and sometimes it can be a difficult thing if there is an incident going on to actually look at that sharing side of things, but the timeliness of that sharing also helps with providing information to other institutions. If we see a serial sort of approach from an actor that's targeting the community, that reciprocating arrangement of being able to get that or share that information, it helps us all. And so from that point of view, as institutions, we sit here with that ability to anonymize data. And that anonymization just means the information's out there. No one necessarily knows who's going through an incident or having, a day, week, or month of pain. It's simply about how we can all help on that global basis of sharing. And so that was one of the big drivers for us to have a lot of involvement in this sort of thing.
Great. I see a hand up. It popped up. Colin, did you have, there it is. Colin, you had a question or comment you wanted to finish us off with?
Yeah, if I could. Thank you for the presentation today. It's been fantastic. I'm not really quite sure how to word this question, and you may have addressed it in other ways, but what obligations do the entities involved in this conversation today have in terms of reporting and sharing information with national governments, regional governments, and so forth, in terms of the things that each of our regions might share with each other?
Shall I go first? I'll go first from the UK perspective. From our perspective, Jisc as an entity are not tied to any government funding or organisation effectively. So we are a not-for-profit, and we solely provide services in the education sector. So we don't have a requirement externally. I will stress this enough. External to the community that we drive our member services for, we don't have a requirement to feed any information back to our governments effectively. Where we do have that requirement is only on a internal, on a national basis. I hope that might clear that up definitely from the UK perspective. So don't think that any indicators that would be shared through this platform would instantly go through to our government representations. The only way that would happen is if we had an internal indicator on the basis of the sharing, but then that would be referenced back to a UK institution.
The exact same scenario as from an Australian perspective. We would only provide information to the government if we've actually seen that information on our network. And then if we saw an institution affected, that would be a conversation between us and that institution, and then really comes down to the institution's desire or feeling as far as sharing with the government goes.
Yeah, and from the Canadian context, we are the exact same. Great question. Okay, it is 3:45 in Eastern Canada. I did finish up by putting up the contact slide so you can have everyone's contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me or others if you'd like any additional information that wasn't covered. I want to finish off by thanking my colleagues around the world for joining us today. It was a lot of fun to put this together, and it was really great to be able to talk about this. It was a long time coming and a lot of hard work. Thank you for accommodating our times and dinners and early mornings. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to repaying the favor out to some of you as well.